Welcome to today's episode of the Total Innovation Podcast. Today we have the privilege of hosting a true trailblazer in the world of open innovation, open talent, and crowdsourcing, Steve Rader. Steve is the program manager for the Center of Excellence for Collaborative Innovation at NASA, where he spearheads revolutionary approaches to solving some of the most complex challenges in aerospace and beyond. With a career dedicated to leveraging the power of global collaboration, Steve has been instrumental in harnessing the collective intelligence of diverse crowds to drive groundbreaking solutions. From space missions to cutting-edge technological advancements, his work is reshaping the way we think about innovation. So join us as we dive into Steve's journey, exploring the fascinating projects that he's led and uncover his insights into the future of collaborative problem solving. Get ready to be inspired by the man who's not just reaching for the stars, but bringing them closer through the power of innovation. Welcome, Steve.
Oh, thanks, Simon. It's great to be here.
So the purpose of this podcast is to try and get a bit of a deep dive into the how, right? For folks that don't know, though, maybe you could just quickly introduce the NASA Center of Excellence for Collaborative Innovation, COECI, I think is
Sure.
the
Yeah,
acronym.
yeah, COSI, it's a center of excellence that's been around since about 2011, and it came about really at the request of the White House Office of Science and Technology Policy, because the administration saw the value in open innovation, and NASA had started some pilots. But the center of excellence is really built to help both NASA and any federal agency around the U.S. government to help understand what open innovation is, to advance it, and then provide that as a service to all those organizations so that they can put into practice the use of open innovation and, more recently, open talent. So the use of platform-based crowds to help find the technologies, the expertise, the ideas that we can't necessarily get just from within our own organizations.
You guys have built a capability for NASA, but also for the wider federal government as well, over the course of just over a decade or so, which is pretty incredible. Can you talk a little bit around your personal motivation, like a bit about your background and what led you there, and how you found yourself in this exciting, challenging space?
Yeah, it's interesting. Back in 2010, I read Jeff Howe's book, Crowdsourcing. And once I read that book, I immediately knew this is an important development in the world. This tapping into human diversity and innovation in a way that we haven't been able to up to now is going to be a game changer. And so I kind of got out there and joined a bunch of crowds, tried to understand what was going on. And then once NASA stood up the Center of Excellence and they had an opening, I moved over into that. The motivation for me is, and it's funny because this has kind of evolved over time, because I started with, wow, open innovation is really cool and can do some neat things. But then I kind of took a step back a few years into it and started thinking about, well, why is this such an important tool? And what I came up with, and I think it's something we all know, but don't necessarily reflect on as much as we probably should, is that the pace and volume of change that we're seeing in the technological landscape is just overwhelming. I call it the tsunami of technology, and have a whole bunch of data around how big this development cycle is, and how this compression of change is really changing the way organizations have to react. And it's really brought a new kind of phenomena in technological development, where there is so much going on in so many different disciplines using kind of building block technologies like 3D printing and machine learning and AI, and different software tools and automation and robotics, that you're getting parallel development in lots of different industries, to the point that it's causing disruptions because you can't monitor all the technology development that's going on, and you can't possibly keep track of all of the intersections between industries. And so it's not uncommon that a technology or a solution will kind of suddenly emerge onto the scene, where it's coming from, say, mining, and suddenly in this new industry, and it's fully formed and developed much more rapidly than other technologies where you used to see it developing and coming out of the lab. And I truly believe that open innovation is one of the only tools that helps you find those technologies, those experts, those ideas that are out there as latent solutions. Because you can't just Google the latest and greatest tech. You can't just Google this intersection of need and solutions that are out there in these different industries. They use different jargon, they're addressing different problems, and it's this very abstract problem. And it turns out that open innovation is the unique tool. It is that special tool that is shown over and over and over to be really good at that. And so the why for me is this is a mandatory tool for organizations to leverage to kind of hedge against that change rate and that volume of technology that's potentially disruptive for them in ways that are really creative. And I've just seen it work over and over. So the why has built for me as we've had more and more successes. I was just looking today, we're almost to 850 projects that we've done over the years. And the success rate is like 95%. And when you're seeing that many good results come out of a methodology and out of an industry, you get pretty convinced that it's an important piece. And so internally to NASA, I think if we're going to stay relevant and competitive in the world of space exploration, and there's more competition now with governments and commercial than ever before, that's an important thing that I want to bring to NASA and the federal government is we have to stay relevant and competitive. And so we need to train up everyone on how to use these tools and how to access them.
So looking back after 850-ish, and congratulations, it's probably, the biggest single deployment of open innovation, open talent challenges anywhere, right? Like there's, from a platform perspective, we've obviously done many more, but representing a variety of different industries. And I know our relationship goes back to some of those early days with your incentive pieces. But that's with the power of 2020 hindsight, right? You've now got the evidence, it works, you've got the stats and the data points. Outside of the fact that the White House basically called and said, we want to do this, which obviously is not an everyday occurrence in most organizations, and is a slightly different mandate, therefore, to get on and do it. Although I suspect doing it wasn't that well defined back then either, right? It was, some element of bringing the outside in some way, shape, or form. What did that early foundation setting look like? And maybe you might want to apply that a bit, if you can, to a 2024 context rather than 2011. Yeah. But still, how would you think about that?
Yeah, I think it was not very clean. It was very messy, right? So if for those who have gone through Harvard Business School's courses, they actually teach a case study called Houston, We Have a Problem, which is a case study of NASA's failure in open innovation. It's the rejection of open innovation because Jeff Davis, when he had such success in the pilots with an incentive, and you guys early on, he turned around and said, let's all go use this. And all the scientists and engineers were like, hey, wait a second, we're the experts. We don't want to go take the best part of our job and outsource it. This is what you pay us for. And we've seen that pattern over and over, but that helped to inform us really on how to talk to our workforce about what these tools are. And really couch them not as a replacement for innovation, but as finding the best starting point for innovation. Because if you're going to go innovate, you need the best ideas and technologies and experts to inform that. And everyone knows that. They just don't know necessarily that simple Google searches and some conferences don't do that for you anymore, right? So we had to pivot there. I think we had to build some credibility within the agency as well with the internal platform. So we started with NASA at Work, which was the incentive platform initially, and we've kind of migrated to that platform to what we call NASA Spark now. But we built that from just a few thousand employees up to about 30,000 employees now, where most of the workforce engages with innovation using that platform. And it's a great way to kind of find challenges, to find the experts within the agency. And I think for organizations, starting in open innovation, an internal platform is kind of a safe place to go do that. But we also learned very early on from other organizations, there are significant pitfalls if you grab that and do a little innovation theater where you're not really serious and you do kind of broad challenges to just give us your best ideas with no intention of actually going and doing anything. And learning those lessons from other organizations really helped us to build an effective internal tool there. And then I think the other thing was that we figured out over the first few years that this was a growing and dynamic landscape of an industry. Lots of different communities and platforms were being developed. Some were really good, some were not so great, and some were very specialized, some were very broad, and they took advantage of platform-based curated crowds in very different ways, right? Topcoder does a whole series of challenges to develop software, whereas you guys do more traditional challenges, but you have several flavors from ideation all the way to the implementation of prototypes. And so we were seeing all these different models and all these different ways of doing things, and we think, wow, in government, it's so hard to just have a single contract, right? It takes like a year to put a contract in place. What can we do to kind of facilitate getting the best of class? And so one of the things we did that I think was one of the best innovations we did early on in about 2015 was we put together what we call a multi-vendor IDIQ contract, which is we went out and solicited as many crowds that we thought could meet our basic threshold. And the first time we did that, we had 10, right? You guys were part of that, right? We had that 10 different platforms that each had a different way of doing this. And then we competed task orders, right? And we basically took different problems and implemented that using both competes authority, which is kind of a governmental authority to run for NASA to run challenges, but also procurement authority, which basically allows us to subcontract our problem solving to companies like Wazoku or like Topcoder to say, go develop this solution, and they turn around and run a challenge with their crowd. Those innovations in procurement have been really instrumental because now we're on the second version of that contract. We now have 32 different platforms, which if you add up all the crowds is like 200 million people worldwide. It's just phenomenal. And we're about to come out with the third rendition of that, which will I can't really talk about, but we'll continue this idea of creating really an ecosystem of curated crowds that we can tap into. And in fact, we've expanded it not just to open innovation, but to the new trend of open talent, where we're noticing that experts aren't where you expect them to be, and you can actually find them via some of these curated platforms in a much more streamlined way. So we're trying to prototype and understand what that looks like, and that's included in that contract now. So that's kind of how we moved through that early time until we are where we are now. And a lot of the same still applies. It's still a dynamic marketplace. We're still watching things evolve even in 2024.
Do you feel like you've overcome that resistance and change management piece now, where this is a part of the fabric of the way things work that people generally understand? I've often told people, when they say, but we have brilliant people internally, I say, NASA has rocket scientists, and it's really embraced open talent and open innovation, right? So I'm sure that was a tough audience to convince that kind of quasi non-experts could do something, differently, better, arguably, than the highly qualified experts. That's their entire identity and raison d'etre in life. So
yeah, well, I would say for one, we've been successful in a lot of things, but I would say there's still a large number of people at NASA that don't even know our program exists, right? we are not there into the 100%. Everyone knows that everyone uses it, and we're working hard on that. We have a new innovation academy where we're trying to create mavens throughout the organization that know how these tools work and can help. And I would say any organization would be naive to think that resistance isn't always latently there, right? Because it's until someone uses it and understands the tool, there's always these questions, and you always want to be careful in the way you talk about open innovation, because if it is sensed that this is a replacement for their ability to innovate, that you will get an unconscious resistance, right? And I think it's important, like even in the way we talk about it, like the way you were talking about, then that our experts don't. We have great experts, and they really are the experts. What we're tapping into in open innovation isn't like a lack of their intelligence or a lack of their creativity or a lack of their innovation. It is simply tapping into knowledge of technologies or some sort of cross-pollination between disciplines or industries that is almost impossible to detect on your own, right? That you remain blind to simply because you are the expert within your field, working within your field. You can't possibly know what's John Deere is doing over here, or what some mining industry is doing over here. And yet those technologies, if somebody has the right insights, can say, hey, look, you can actually use this in what you're doing. I would say too, our domain experts have the same problem that every industry's experts have, and that is there are so many new technologies that are game changers that you cannot possibly be expert in all of them. I use quantum sensing a lot because if you're monitoring what's happening in the quantum world, if you will, with quantum sensing, quantum networking, quantum computing, the future is very different. And it's spread across, kind of the sci-fi part of that's yet to come. But you can go buy tens, if not hundreds, of different quantum sensors commercially today. And a lot of people don't even know that exists. And those quantum sensors work very differently and have very different capabilities than normal sensors. Well, I don't care what kind of expert I'm talking to, very few of those are quantum experts, right? And so one of the things we say is, hey, look, if you're looking for simply capability, trying to solve a problem, there are probably 20 different technologies out there that you cannot possibly be an expert in, but that could be the kind of thing that you really need, right? And we see it all throughout every industry, right? Even in the IT industry, we went from where you kind of understood all of it to now there's cybersecurity and cloud and all these kind of different pieces that make up the industry. So the more complex our industries get, the more you have kind of fragmented expertise, and the more open innovation becomes an important tool to help you cross-pollinate.
And that finding the best starting point piece really does underpin a lot of the thinking here then, right? Like you're trying to help make, I guess, accelerate, increase the breadth and the completeness of that initial research piece as before you get into really kind of building and developing mode. Just on that building and developing though, I think one of the problem areas that people often start with is they'll get this, a great idea or a set of great ideas in, and then what, right? How do you get to impact? How do you, whatever impact looks like? So how's that managed inside NASA?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's the same problem everyone has, right? There's the valley of death for startup type of efforts. We've got the full range of, from discovery and inception of a technology or an idea all the way through implementation. And for NASA, you've got stringent certifications that have to happen along the way, and you're kind of doing one-off missions, which is really hard to build an industry off of sometimes for some of our solutions. So we work as part of a portfolio within the Space Technology Mission Directorate at NASA, which includes not just the discovery part, which I would say open innovation, the thing it's best at is discovery, right? Discovery of the ideas, technologies, or experts that you just don't have any other way. But what that can bring you is a novel idea that's not been developed yet, or a full-blown technology that's sitting in another industry all ready to go. That's a very different technology readiness level that open innovation can bring in. And so what we find is prizes and challenges, this open innovation component, we find ways to link it over to our Flight Opportunities Program, which is trying to move things up the ladder of technology readiness by kind of giving it test environments that are more space-like. Or we work with SBIRs and the small business innovation grants that are given out, as well as some of the contracts that start to move things forward, because we can sometimes discover entrepreneurs and innovators that might be best to help those contracts move forward in ways that, a lot of these government programs are kind of closed off, or it's hard for new folks to discover them and understand how they work, and we can provide a conduit into that. We're finding more and more that open innovation is a kind of a new acquisition model where you can actually set it up end to end, where if you're trying to especially get new teams and new industries going, that you can start with an ideation to find the players, and then with each prize you're kind of funding forward. So it's a little bit higher risk for the government in that any winner can walk away with their prize money. But if you have multiple phases, you can say, look, we're going to award the first 10, X amount of dollars, and that prize money we can size to kind of fund their next phase, right? And so they can then go from idea to maybe a theoretical proof, and then we can award a subset of those and whittle down to the subset that then we can say, okay, now we're looking for prototypes, and the prize money that covers that can kind of help them with their funding of that prototype. And we can just keep going. In fact, the National Geospatial Intelligence Agency, we're working a program with them where at the end of that program, there will be operating spacecraft in space, and they'll be buying the data from those spacecraft, but it is all done through a prizes and challenges phasing. It's like a $30 million program. And I think we're finding the flexibility we get with that and the way that kind of helps business along to form. And, in those, a lot of times, these companies keep their IP, right? And we're buying things back as the government. And I think that's a really healthy kind of way to go about this. But we're really trying to link with these other programs to provide a better end-to-end development, funnel, right? Because you're trying to get from lots of ideas that develop down into actual implementation.
Do you think about measuring value, or like the sort of ROI aspects of this? Like how is that measured? You guys have very long cycles, and that's probably something that a PLC or equivalent may not necessarily have, right? A listed company runs to
It's so funny you say that, because I
quarterly.
happen to just be reading Michael Lurig's Design Thinking and Innovation Metrics on that very topic. We've been working on this for a long time, and I will say it is a really hard nut to crack, right? Especially on the early innovation stuff, because the solutions you get then have to get fitted into a design, and they get traded with other options, and sometimes they morph and change. And by the time they get implemented, sometimes it's very hard to say, oh, that was this idea we came out with a challenge back here. There's just been a lot of change. What we do is we try to measure everything we can. So we measure how many participants we got, how many solutions we got, and then we try to look at those solutions and say, was that fully successful in the objectives we were trying to meet? Did it significantly advance us, or was it simply an incremental advance or no advance? We get some where there were no advance. One of the ones we did early on for galactic cosmic rays, we got lots of submissions in on kind of magnetic solutions that would kind of repel the magnetic ray or the cosmic rays that we have outside of low Earth orbit. But none of the solutions we got in were better than our homegrown set, right? Because that is a very specialty kind of thing. But we did want to see, is somebody doing? But I will tell you, even though no one bested our folks, that informed us, because I think we had something like 7 of the 10 finalists were nuclear physicists from around the world who had all participated on the challenge and spent 40 to 80 hours kind of developing these mathematical solutions. And I think that's an important data point to see is oh, our folks really are on the right path, right? So anyway.
And how do you engage subject matter experts in that? Like, what does that process look like? I think there's often fear around, what am I taking on here? There's the IP consideration. There's also the evaluation and part of that.
Yeah, part of it is so we have a roadshow that we use. In fact, we've kind of backed off using it because a couple of years ago we actually hit 100 challenges at once, and we've kind of maintained that. But what that said to us is, oh, the word is out there, people are using us. We actually need to now work on scaling our operations so we can handle the throughput of challenges. But in that roadshow, we kind of explain, how this works. But then we don't just say, hey, look at this great set of tools, come and use these, and give them really good rationale for why it's going to help them. We show them the data, and often this stuff is cost saving. So we'll always compare uh, what they would have done if they hadn't used open innovation versus the cost to using our tools. And I think something like, let me just see the data here, 74% of the time we have cost savings. And that average cost savings tends to be almost 50%, which that's a huge amount, right? So we've spent about $112 million total on all of our challenges. We think we've saved close to 170 million. That's a very good payback on this. And so we try to capture those kinds of metrics that help us. And then as we go through this, we have team members, and this is why the throughput is so important. We have team members that help them every step of the way. So we don't just say, go use open innovation, best of luck to you. We actually provide them an advisor, helps them formulate what their problem is, what those requirements are, basically build the task order, do the contracting for them, get them matched up with a curated crowd that then can formulate the public challenge if that's what's needed, or go find the expert. And then we kind of walk with them through this so that at no point are they left alone with it. We are always helping them to understand their expectations, how to work it, make sure they're happy with what they get, which I think on any new tool, that's often a mistake that's made with organizations is, hey, if I just tell you about a great tool, everyone's going to go off and use it. And the barrier to entry on anything new is especially hard, especially when legal and communications and procurement are involved, right? Nobody likes to tilt at those windmills. And we've spent a lot of time making our Center of Excellence have a process that enables all of the scientists and engineers to have an easier time using those. But it is still a sell. You still have to sell what we call the problem owners, or the opportunity owners, the ones who can actually implement the solutions that you go do get. They're the important ones, which I'll just add on. One of the things we see a lot of organizations doing open innovation is they do it as a top down. They say, here's $10 million. We want 4 challenges to hit our major needs. There's nothing wrong with those programs. In fact, there's some really good things about that. But what we learned early on was that actually ends up having a voluntold SME or problem owner who's like, well, I was going down this path and now you want me to use a challenge. And we find that if we can convince the problem owners, you need to use this tool as part of your core systems engineering process, as part of your design process. This shouldn't be something that someone mandates and has to hand you. You should budget for this. We actually are cheaper than what you would normally do. So just use your existing budget, use open innovation to discover the elements of your trade study that you need to be focused on, and potentially even more. And then we'll help you get farther faster. And that has actually paid off because that's a very much a bottoms up approach rather than the top down. Now, we at NASA still have some top down programs with centennial challenges, and we still get some funding where we'll go out on our internal platform and say, hey, who's got some challenges that they want to try? We have some funding and we'll match you up. But we are trying to encourage every organization to budget some of their budget towards open innovation as simply one of their tools that they now have in their toolkit.
Yeah, build it more into the operational core, right? That's
Exactly.
the ultimate piece for this, which kind of blows my mind with the amount of evidence there is of the efficacy, the cost effectiveness, call that ROI, if you will, for getting to faster maybes, if you want to put it like that, with and that really does have resilience, and sort of, I guess, risk to a degree linked against it as well, as in managing risk rather than bringing risk, because you can't go more holistic than asking a global crowd and
Yeah.
and validating. those things. Well, it does sound like a little bit. I know we're running tight on time, so maybe a couple of quick questions for you. One on the resources, right? You've spoken about the amount of things you're doing. It sounds like there's a very big team against all of this. Is there, or what does the resourcing look like?
We're a pretty small team. We have about 12 of us. And in fact, we have a pilot right now we're running with freelancers where we actually have a set of freelancers from Upwork through Ensemble who are helping us with, we have kind of pretty big spikes in our demand. A lot of people come to us with end of year, fiscal year money. And so our summers tend to be really busy, but other times this is less. And so we're trying to look at the dynamics and we're trying to understand the role of freelancers in the future economy. So we were piloting that. But I'll say we pretty much resource in a way that's scalable. So for instance, other federal agencies, when we do work for them, part of the funds that they transfer to us to go basically execute their challenges on our contract, a piece of that actually funds some of our team so that the more of those that we get in, the more we can grow that side of the team as needed, and it doesn't take away from NASA resources. On the NASA side, we basically also tax them as they come. So they help to fund our team. And then our technology mission directorate, they fund our core and keep us going in general. So we have a nice steady amount of funding, but it's also built to scale so that as we get more projects in, we're able to get a few more resources in. We're currently using some of those resources to build up a digital workflow on Salesforce where we can actually more easily train new people on how to do this so that as I mentioned the Open Innovation Academy, we're training people to not just go back to their organization and find opportunities and recognize where this is a best fit tool, but also training them on how to use these kind of digital workflows to help formulate the requirements and get them formulated in a way that we can get them contracted quickly. And the hope there is the more people we get around the agency that can execute parts of our process, the more we can scale to where we can do 200 or 300 of these at a time and aren't limited to the about 100 that we're currently limited to.
Nice, yeah. We should talk at some time around some of the work that we've done in there on that enablement from a digital perspective
Excellent.
as well. So last thought really then from a closing thought, what does the future look like? You guys have done some incredible work. It's been a decade or more, but to a degree it feels like you still have some mountains to climb, and I guess or maybe in NASA's sense some far off destinations to reach. But what does this look like?
Yeah, well, I mean, we want to make this a very valuable tool. So we're going to focus on where do we bring the most value, right? So for a while there, we were playing with things like graphics challenges and videos, and some of that is still valuable and still good value for the government. But we want to focus on what are the main problems NASA have that are a big payoff if we solve, right? Or something that we can really show as value and track. So we're working on better ways to track value, but also STMD, the Space Technology Mission Director, we're all working together to prioritize to make sure that we're putting the funding towards the highest priority pieces of NASA's mission. So that's one focus. We're working, as I mentioned, on scaling through both digitization of our workflow as well as training people on how to do that so that we can expand. I tell people it's kind of like going from making a good hamburger to trying to actually open 25 McDonald's where everyone in those 25 McDonald's can make a good hamburger. That process we're finding is hard, very hard. How do you make sure that you can get more of this done with less overhead and do it in a way where the quality all stands up? On the open talent side, we're really piloting a lot and trying to understand what is it. Every time I try to peel it away from open innovation, it comes right back because it really is the experts that you still need to bring in, sometimes to help you judge, sometimes to help you develop pieces of this. But the open talent piece is important. But eventually, I'd really like a piece of that to go to human resources, right? To be part of the human capital that NASA does as a regular thing. We're working on ways to embed this in all of our procurement so that all of the NASA ecosystem of contractors also uses open innovation, right? So the Boeings, the Lockheeds, the Jacobs, that they see the value of this and are able to use it because they do the bulk of NASA's work. And then finally, we're probably going to have in the next year or so, we're going to open a little bit of a curated community of our own, where every time someone participates in a NASA challenge, we invite them to become part of the NASA family. And in that, we can provide them, pointers to all the places and platforms that we're running challenges, but we can also let them talk to each other, and we can show them our education programs and show them our launches, so that it's not just that they participate in some little NASA thing and then they feel disconnected from NASA. We want them to feel connected with us. And we feel that the curated crowd model is a really great way to do that. And we're working with the education office, who's already started building pieces of that up. And we're excited to see where that goes.
Well, an exciting vision, and congrats on really being a pioneer in this space, right? As I said, not everyone gets a call from the White House. You guys have had a lot of latitude, I think, to be able to really test some of these things and build, but you've used that latitude to build, as I said, an unparalleled capability here, I think. And I guess it's sobering to a degree to know that even with all of that, there's still a long way to go, but the evidence is there to support that, right? So thank you very much, Steve, for sharing your incredible insights and your strategies, and very openly and honestly, I think, with us today, for both problem solving and the role of open talent within all of that. Hope everyone listening to this has found it informative and useful. Before we go, where can folk find you, Steve? I know you've got a NASA hat, and also you're very open about sharing this, but you do help others with this as well. So where can they
Sure.
find?
And the easiest place to find me on LinkedIn, if you just search NASA Steve Rader, you should be able to find me, maybe even just Steve Rader. But I'm out there. Feel free to connect to me and message. Happy to chat with anyone.
Great. Thank you very much. And thanks for everyone for listening. Before we go, don't forget to subscribe to the Total Innovation Podcast on your favorite platform so you never miss an episode. We've got some amazing conversations lined up after Steve, including the amazing Steven Shapiro with his latest book, Pivotal, where we'll be explaining the concept of innovating where you differentiate, and you won't want to miss it. So thank you for listening, and we look forward to bringing you more insights and stories from the world of innovation. Until next time, here's to changing the world one idea at a time.